Greetings and welcome to Behind the Shadows. My name is Susan Finelli and I am your host and author of Behind the Shadows, a program where we go behind the shadows of what meets the eye. Today we will be going behind the shadows of Obamacare, and our guest tonight is Keith McMurdy. Keith is a partner at the New York law firm of Fox Rothschild, which is a national law firm. Keith lends his knowledge to the firm's healthcare reform working group, which is designed to help clients sort through the issues of the changes stemming from Obamacare. Keith, welcome to Behind the Shadows.
Thank you, Susan. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. And I must say, this is a hot button topic we're talking about today.
It is.
I mean, the president was on the air this morning discussing it, and that's all you hear now is Obamacare. And when I was telling people I was doing this show, they were saying, is it going to be a political show? I said, no, you could watch the pundits about the political show. We're just going to get down to the nitty-gritty of Obamacare. So the court upheld Obamacare to many people's dismay, saying it was a tax.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the difference between people saying it's a government mandate but it's a tax. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I guess in many ways for the non-legal observer, it's kind of semantics. Mm-hmm. The question was whether or not the government had the ability to regulate interstate commerce, or more importantly, whether or not they had the ability to control healthcare insurance as it's delivered in the country. And so the way that the law was presented, the argument in favor of supporting it was that the government has the federal government has the ability to regulate interstate commerce. And the concern was, of course, that once you can regulate and force people to buy something, it's effectively unlimited. The Congress could say, you know, from this day forward you can only buy cars that are made in America. Or from this day forward you have to buy a certain number of tomatoes. Mm-hmm. So the concern was that the Supreme Court would uphold it on the grounds that it was a valid regulation of interstate commerce. Justice Roberts really kind of threw a curveball to everyone where he said, I don't think that it is a regulation of interstate commerce. What it looks to me like is it's a tax. If you don't purchase the insurance, you can pay a tax. So therefore Congress has the ability to tax. I'll uphold it as a tax. The drawback to it was that the supporters of the act said, well, we don't want it to be a raising of taxes, but it is the safest way to allow Congress to do it.
I see. So I was just reading yesterday or today that more than 60% of Americans don't know what Obamacare is. So let's try to shed some light on this subject. What is Obamacare? Well,
its technical term is the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. And it's become known as Obamacare. Some people refer to it as PPACA, the Affordable Care Act. What it is, it's a system that puts in place a mandate that individuals have health insurance coverage, either through the acquisition of coverage through state or federal exchanges, or through their employers. And so what it did in an ideal setting was that it made health insurance coverage available to everybody without restriction. But the problem is that it also sort of overstepped the boundaries of what was already in place, so that it sort of created mass confusion.
And confusion
has reigned supreme.
Exactly,
yes.
Exactly. The operative word being confusion. Is it really going to happen? I mean, what they're saying, and you know, the president was on the news this morning, and you know, talking about the glitches in the system. But by the way, you know, everyone's going to have affordable health care. Is that going to work?
Affordable is a relative term, of course,
mm-hmm.
but the mechanism of the act is in place such that it's sort of an unstoppable rolling boulder right now, mm-hmm. so that it would be very difficult to say that it won't occur. How it will occur and in what stages it will occur, you know, the big trigger was supposed to be January 1 of 2014, where the employer mandate obligated all employers to provide health insurance coverage, or rather employers with more than 50 employees. that was extended until January 1 of 2015. So now the January 1, 2014 mandate is that all individuals have to have coverage, either through the exchange or through their employer. There is some discussion about whether or not that will be extended for a year, but the back rooming, the regulations and the personnel that they had to hire to do it, and all of the framework is, whether or not working, is in place. So it's much like I think of it in terms of a dimmer switch for your lights, is that it's on and it's going to eventually become brighter, but at this point we're still kind of dim in the shadows as far as figuring out what it is.
Yeah, but Obamacare is behind the shadows.
It's very complex.
It is. It is. I'd like to break down some of the components a little bit. Now, I want to start with taxes, and there's one tax. I mean, I don't know all the taxes, and you'll talk to us about them, but the one tax I do know, which really bothers me, is that sellers of real property are going to be taxed, I think 3.8%, a sales tax, to help fund Obamacare.
There were a number of taxes added. There are essentially two types of taxes. There were funding taxes that were designed to sort of generally fund and improve the financial condition of the startup process. And as you mentioned, the real estate taxes that went into effect, taxes on capital gains. There were some general taxes that are sort of funding taxes. And then as we get further into implementation, this year's got taxes on medical devices. There's some taxes on companies that do experimental treatment. There's taxes payable by the insurance companies or by the plan. There's a $2 tax. There's a $63 tax. There's a variety of charges associated with bringing this thing up to, it needs money on the front end.
Right.
And that's really the primary concern with the increase in cost to the individual happened about 2 years ago, as you mentioned, with the real estate tax, because somehow we had to get the money in place to build the thing so that when the premium dollars start rolling in, there's money to pay claims. And that's been the kind of the leveling. A lot of insurance companies are experiencing it this year, where on average, I think there's a $65 charge that goes to fund various components, but that $65 per person charge just gets folded back into premiums.
I see.
So premiums went up. And so I've had a lot of people who came to me with the reaction was, I thought premiums were supposed to go down. Well, they may eventually, but at the front end they all went up because there had to be a pool of money to pay the claims.
Now, are premiums tax deductible?
Premiums are tax deductible to the extent that the employer pays them. There's a specific code section in the IRS code that provides that employers that provide health insurance coverage for their employees can deduct that cost to the employer, and it's not treated as taxable compensation to the individual. So if you work for me and I pay for your health insurance, you don't pay a tax on it, I don't have to treat it as income for the purpose of paying taxes.
Right.
The difficulty with that is that it's, some people would argue that it's, other than the mortgage interest deduction, may be the single largest tax break to corporations in the country. Because if I want to not have a profit for a given year, I just dump it all into my retirement plan or my health plan. So, it's not taxable from the perspective of, I'm giving it to you, you don't pay a tax on it, the corporation takes a deduction for it, nobody's receiving any income on it. That can be problematic when you're talking about a government that is in desperate need of funding right now.
So if, Joe USA goes into the exchange and buys the insurance and pays a tax on it, he cannot deduct it, but the corporation can. Did I understand that correctly?
Well, he may not. First of all, the amount of money that he pays for his individual coverage in the exchange will take into account his individual household income.
Right.
And then the premium that he will pay will be reduced based on a variety of factors, including his taxable income.
I see.
So he won't pay a direct tax. It's kind of an indirect tax. Corporations will still be, companies like ours, like Fox Rothschild, we take a deduction for the amount of health insurance coverage that we provide our employees. We still get to do that.
I see, I see. Let's talk a little bit about penalties. I know someone who is, actually he's the guy who cuts my hair, and he said, I'm self-employed, and I'm not going to buy Obamacare because I don't know what this is going to be, so I'm going to pay a $95 penalty. He'd rather pay the $95 penalty than be forced into, you know, sign it and then read it kind of effect. Right. So,
well, there are two types of penalties. There's the individual penalty for not having coverage, and then there's the penalty that employers will pay if they don't offer qualifying coverage. If you look at the individual penalty first, $95 is the penalty that's bantered about in the press, but it's actually $95 or 1% of household income, whichever is greater.
I see.
And that phases up over years, so that depending on your total household income, depending on the number of dependents that you have, you could say, well, my penalty will be $95 a year. But we've been looking, for example, at some, if you say high net worth individuals that don't have insurance.
Right.
1% of household income could be a substantial penalty.
Money. Exactly,
right.
A lot of money.
So we've been encouraging, you know, when people come to me, and companies now, the penalties that companies will pay is if they have over 50 full-time employees and they don't offer coverage, they'll pay a $2,000 per person penalty per year. If they offer coverage and it's not affordable, they'll pay a $3,000 penalty. So individuals, companies, both of them should be consulting with their benefits professionals, with their accountants, to look at what their risk exposure is, because as I approach it, it really is a function of preparing for risk. You're looking at it and saying, if I anticipate this is going to happen, I need to be prepared for what my financial downside might be in any scenario. Right.
So when you said, I just wanted to back up a minute, you said that the tax could be the $2,000 or $3,000 if it's not affordable. So does that mean if the employee portion of the premium is not affordable for the employees?
That's correct.
Then it goes higher.
Right. The definition of affordability is that the cost of single coverage cannot exceed 9.5% of the employee's W-2 income. So, for example,
net or gross?
It's as reported on box 1. Okay. And I did a rough calculation just theoretically. If I were a $10 an hour employee working 30 hours a week, 50 weeks out of the year, my employer could charge me $118 a month as the employee contribution towards health insurance. The employer would have to pick up the balance.
Right.
So what a lot of employers have to be doing is looking at what coverage will cost and then calculating what is an affordable contribution. Because if the contribution is not affordable, then they face the potential of the $3,000 penalty.
I see. Let's talk a little bit about the exchanges, because in this whole fiasco that's been going on over the last 3 weeks, all you hear is exchanges, 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 and people say, and you walk in any store and you see, one of these, but this really doesn't tell you much, and they're in the paper and all over. What are the exchanges?
The exchanges are effectively what it does is it says the insurance companies are going to create a pool that where in the past, as a company, I may have gone and I bought group insurance from Empire Blue Cross.
Right.
Or if I wasn't employed, I might have to go buy individual coverage from Empire. The problem with individual coverage is the premiums were very high because it was underwritten on an individual basis. What these exchanges do is essentially it's the government subsidizing the insurance companies to create a pool so that you can get into this kind of guaranteed issue, lower premium coverage that's not individually based anymore. So it's almost as if we took all the individuals who didn't have employer-sponsored coverage and we created their own pool. Said, now we'll look at you all simultaneously. But it was impossible to look at, say, Manhattan, the same way you'd look at Buffalo, the same way you'd look at Albany, the same way you'd look at Long Island. So what happened in the New York exchange, for example, is it kind of stratified into 11 geographical components.
Right.
And then if you get into the exchange, your premium is based on the geographical area that you live in.
I see, I see. Now, today I was hearing that, and I hadn't even heard it before, but going back to the website for a moment,
yes.
the government website, But then I heard that 14 or 15 states have their own website.
Yes.
And does it feed into the government website? How does that work?
In theory,
yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
In practical application, the difficulty was that 14 states adopted exchanges, or 14 states created state exchanges.
Right.
And the remainders of the states said, we'll wait and see what the federal government does. And the federal exchange, was a website designed out of, Washington, D.C. The problem was that it doesn't communicate with all the things that it's supposed to communicate with. The state exchanges, such for example as New York's, they created their own website, New York Exchange, where you can go and get coverage through New York, or you can go to the federal exchange, which should link you to New York.
Okay.
Problem is that anybody with any tech background will tell you that if the New York one doesn't understand what the Washington one is saying to it, and then it turns out that the exchange programming didn't talk to the IRS programming, and that didn't talk to Health and Human Services programming. So what you have is that it's essentially, if you were speaking Greek and I was speaking English and someone was speaking Italian, all of you speak simultaneously.
Right. That's
the problem that they're experiencing right now, is there's no congruence of communication.
So when the president says that they have people speaking 150 languages, he didn't tell us that it's all at once.
That's the problem. That's exactly the case. Right.
150 languages all at the same time.
And the humor in it was, as we were talking about the initial rollout, and some professionals were sitting around, and I said that my biggest concern was that just what occurred is I hypothesized that it would crash the internet, but I said what was more likely to occur is that if you turned a website on without any beta testing or any kind of advanced suggestion and saying, now on October 1st, we're going to anticipate that 2 million people are going to hit that website simultaneously to try and find out information. And it just destroyed it instantly. And I thought, that's sort of, a corporation would have sat back and said, we need to prepare for this eventuality.
Sure.
The government just turned on the switch and then was surprised that many people hit it.
No disaster recovery plan whatsoever. Let's talk a little bit about the tiers, because I know there are different tiers. Yes. And we'll go into what they are, but I have a question about them. So let's say I go in and I enroll for a particular tier.
Yes.
And I'm not happy with it. Do I have to wait for open enrollment to change it?
Well, that's open to subject and debate right now, but it seems like the answer to that is probably not. But that doesn't mean that there will be any time you can pop in and off and enroll in any time you want to. What employers are dealing with is they're creating tiers, and the tiers are color-coded: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And those tiers would be subject to open enrollment. So if you elect silver coverage with your employer through open enrollment, and then halfway through the year you decide you want to go up or down, you can't do that. You're in open.
You're locked.
You're locked in.
You're locked in.
The exchanges have the first exchange open enrollment period runs October 1 of 2013 through March 31st of 2014.
Okay.
Now, the open enrollment in and of itself suggests that there must be a closed period.
Yeah.
So while some people will say, no, if I'm in silver and in June of next year I want to go to gold, I can just do that. But it does say open enrollment. So the suggestion is that once you're in, and you get that for 12 months until you change later.
Until you change later. So let's talk a little bit about the tiers, because the bronze is kind of like a basic coverage.
Yes.
And just when I was kind of thinking about it, so if you have the basic coverage, you probably, although your premium may be less, you may be paying more at the end of the day.
Yes. The tiers are based on what's called an actuarial valuation. And bronze is 60%, silver is 70%, gold is 80%, and platinum is 90%. And the way that those work is that without boring everyone to death about actuarial calculations, essentially 60% value is 60% of the claims, or 60% of the value of the claim would be covered by the insurance company. As you move up, 70%, 80%, but copays and deductibles. You're absolutely correct that the bronze coverage will probably have higher out-of-pocket expenses, but more importantly, it will also have greater restriction on the providers that you can access, networks, things that you can get. All plans will cover something called minimum essential benefits.
Okay.
But the extent to which they'll cover them and who you can get the benefits from are very differentiated between the classes.
See, my concern with it is that people who are going into the bronze level, you know, or maybe they're probably lower income people, and perhaps they don't understand those issues. So they may be going into this saying, okay, I'm going to buy this coverage, it's X amount of dollars, and then something happens to them and they wind up with these astronomical costs, which they really did not understand. And you know, I have a problem with that. I mean, nothing I can do about it, but
you know, it's funny you say that, because when this act first passed, I think it was in March of 2010. 10, and one of the first calls that I got after some employers and some other people was a hospital administrator that said, we have people in our waiting room that are asking about signing up for free surgery. And I kind of chuckle at that, but now 3 years later, it was indicative of, you know, the kind of lack of communication with respect to what is actually being provided. So I think you're absolutely correct in that a lot of people will get to the point where they go into the exchange or they build their compliance model if they're an employer, but they won't fully understand what it is that's involved. You know, some people will get bronze or silver coverage without paying any premium. But that doesn't mean that there won't be any out-of-pocket cost, and it doesn't mean that they'll be able to go to any doctor in New York City and get whatever they want for free. And that's really where, you know, kind of the difference between, in my opinion, what was portrayed in the media and what is actually in the 2,500 odd pages, is that this is not, you know, guaranteed you will get everything covered, never have to pay a penny out of your pocket. This is taking the morass of insurance and sort of opening it up and say, come on in, see what you can get.
Right, yeah, because researching for the show, I came out with a very different perspective of, you know, listening to the pundits and reading the paper, and I've come up with all these concerns.
Well, yes, you have one half that absolutely hates it, and you have one half that absolutely adores it, and then in the middle you have the practitioners that are trying to help people sort through it, and it's not, in many ways, it's not all horrible, and in many ways, it's not at all what was promised. And that's what, as things roll out, and I think particularly, you know, I'm kind of looking forward to mid-2014 when it gets kind of in swing, where we get a feel for what's actually being provided and what's available. That's when we'll get a real feedback.
Talk to me a little bit about Medicare cuts, and then there was some sort of exclusion with the Supreme Court on the Medicaid and Medicaid expansion.
Yes.
So
that was one of the critical components of the Supreme Court case, and particularly with respect to the Medicaid. Part of what the act included was it was mandating to the state certain benefits that they would have to provide to all people without necessarily funding it. And so although the Supreme Court decision had an epic impact on the individual mandate and the tax issue, what the states were really concerned about was having to provide all these benefits for people without federal money to back it up. So ultimately what the Supreme Court said on that aspect, states, you don't have to do it. So the states were happy, but the rest of it stuck around. And so what you have is there's maybe going to be a shortfall, and you know, the projections are that this is going to cost a lot more than originally anticipated.
I know we're starting to run out of time, and I want to talk a little bit about the elimination of pre-existing conditions and gender discrimination. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Those were very hot topic issues, and certainly they were very heavily played in the media. For years, health plans sponsored by employers were not able to discriminate based on gender or age, or there were multiple rules about exclusions on pre-existing conditions. So if I came to work for you, provided I had coverage before, you could not apply any pre-existing condition exclusions. And in fact, although some other professionals might argue with me on it, it was always sort of my opinion, like, pre-existing condition was all but eliminated already anyhow. So now what you're seeing is the idea that I can hop on any plan in the exchange anytime without worrying about pre-existing condition. But depending on your employer's coverage beforehand, that really wasn't an issue.
I see. But can the health insurance companies, can they price the insurance on location and on age, weight, smoking status? Can they still do that?
There is, they could certainly do it on geographical basis. Weight and age, certainly to the extent that depending on your age they will try and get you into Medicare, and I think we will see that a lot of people that go to the exchanges to get coverage will then be put over on Medicaid or Medicare. The things that they're allowed to consider, certainly they are allowed to consider bad health activities. And smoking is one of those things that they have the ability to price or make it more expensive based on smoking.
I see, I see. So anyway, I'm just getting cued here that we're running out of time. So if you can just kind of give us a little summary of Obamacare, to kind of put it in a package and a bow.
Sure, to the extent that, I mean, obviously my practice area deals primarily with employers.
Right.
And my encouragement to employers is if I told you that, you know, 1 year from now you're going to get hit with a hurricane, you would spend the next year planning for it. And that's what I'm looking at for January 1 of 2015 is going to employers and saying, you need to plan for this. You need to prepare for it. For the individuals, I'm encouraging them to shop. Go and see what's available, because if you can find out, you can make an informed decision. That's what, you know, the ultimate goal is to look, you know, behind the shadows and see and be informed. That way you can make the decision.
So take out your crystal ball. Where are we going to be a year from now?
I think we'll be a little closer to understanding it. I think we'll be. I think we'll probably still be having glitches, but I don't see this going away. I think it's something that is going to be with us for a while, and unless there's a complete change in administration, complete change in Congress, I think that you know, even next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we'll still be working through the process.
Okay. Well, Keith, I want to thank you so much. We've run out of time, which I cannot believe, and promise me that when the dust settles, you'll come back.
Absolutely. It'll be my pleasure.
We look forward to it, because I'm sure there'll be many more questions to answer.
Great.
So thank you again. And I'd like to thank our audience for tuning in. If you've missed any of our shows, you can go to my website at behindtheshadows.com and click on Public Access Television. If you have a topic that you would like us to discuss, you can contact me at Susan@behindtheshadows.com. And if you have questions on Obamacare, you certainly can contact Keith McMurdy. And until next time, remember, the brightest light shines behind the shadows. Thank you so much. I can't believe it.